Hello and welcome to my channel. In this video I'm going to be doing a review and discussing The Servant Mage by Kate Elliott. This was an eARC that I got through NetGalley, and it is, I will note right off the bat, a novella. I didn't originally realize that when I had requested it. But then when I was looking, I'm like, oh, that's really short, and realized it is a novella and not full length. So full disclosure there to talk, just kind of to start with it. But if you've seen many of my videos, you probably know I'm really loving Crown of Stars. I'm still reading through the series, and so this is completely different. Kate Elliott actually has a lot of work, and I do eventually want to read all of it because I've just really enjoyed her writing. So I plan on reading pretty much everything she's ever written once I finally get to that point. It's going to take a while, but I thought, oh cool, this is something new. It's not related to any other series, and so I jumped on requesting it and was super happy to get approved for this one, even after finding out it is a novella. And I'm not usually a huge fan of like novellas, short stories, just because I feel like it's pretty limiting. But you do tend to get, there's just these like things that you can pick up that are being done in the way because of the fact that it's a novella, it's a short story. Kind of have to get right down to the point. Usually have that kind of like weird, like somewhat abrupt but open-ended type ending. And so I'm not a massive fan, but I think Kate Elliott did a really good job here with this one, despite some of those drawbacks still being there just because of the chosen medium. So what is this story about? Well, it's Kate Elliott, so there's a lot of world building that goes into this, despite the fact that it is a pretty short time. The main character we're following is Felion, and she is a servant mage, hence the title. And I think the original title was Lamplighter because that's what she does. And the world, at the point where we're introduced to it, there used to be a monarchy, and mages were, it sounds like, a very important part of that monarchy, and they were in power. So then when another group called the Liberationists took over, they ousted the monarchy. They ended up kind of basically enslaving mages. They're in, technically it's like an indentured servitude, but it's designed similar to what some real world things were, where it's never really going to run out because mages are basically deemed to be too dangerous to be out on their own. So they go to, and it's even called an asylum, basically, is where once they're old enough that it's thought that they'll start using magic on their own, they're taken to this place, and they're trained and kind of indoctrinated to follow what the Liberationist says, that the magic is very dangerous. They have it because they're possessed by demons, and they basically just learn these simple uses for it. So Felion, who has the power of fire, this is an elemental magic system for fire, air, earth, water, and ether. So something that we've seen, but done interestingly and with definitely some twists and added bits of world building, which I really expected, and we definitely get. But so her like main responsibility is legitimately like making lamps, and it's not like the just sitting there like using fire to light a lamp. She basically can like form a lamp out of kind of like energy is sort of how it works, and so it's once again interesting even from the use of the magic system, even though it's a familiar premise. We get a bit interesting, different little tidbits there. But her world is turned upside down basically when she's sort of recruited, sort of kidnapped by some monarchists who are originally wanting to use her to rescue some of their other people who are like trapped in mines, and they need somebody who has the power of like, making the lamps in order to assist with this. But because it's a novella, very quickly the plot changes and we're directed to instead where there apparently has been another royal child that's been born, and I won't get into any details on that because the summary mentions everything I've mentioned. I've talked in slight more detail to elaborate on what's going on, but I haven't talked about anything in this that is an actual spoiler, and I won't because this will be coming out before the book is actually out since it was the eARC. But so then directed him, there's a plot basically by the Liberationists, and they're going to try to take out this newborn royal child basically before the monarchists can come. So ends up directing us that way. So right off the bat, things that I really enjoyed about this is we have an elemental magic system, which is not the most original, and it's one I actually have found I really enjoy if it's done well. when you're using a very familiar type of magic system, it's really easy to make it just seem generic, but that is not always the case. It can be really, really well done. There have been some books that I've really enjoyed that have used it really well. For example, Weavers by John Walker used what felt like a very basic premise for how the magic worked, but then really did more to kind of build it on. And then, of course, there's Sword of Kaigan, which is very elemental magic heavy, but once again, did a lot to make it where it's not just like, oh, we control the elements. There's a lot more that goes into it. And I think that was done here really well. We learned that not only are there the different types of magic, but different magic users can do different things. Sometimes they have like unique things that they can do, and all of the different pieces there too, with the fact that, the servant mages aren't actually trained to know how to do all kinds of stuff. We have a little bit of mystery, but we get to see some of it in action and see what all is actually possible. We just get a glimpse of what may be possible with the magic system. And the fact that it is, to an extent, and once again I won't get into details, but it is to an extent based on like demons or wraiths that are like inside of people that allow them to access the magic. We get differing viewpoints, whether we're looking to the liberationists or the monarchists on how this actually worked. But it's once again taking a kind of a simple mold and then doing something interesting and doing something different with it. The base kind of plot and story also does something very similar. We've seen a million times the, young protagonist taken from their world and recruited by the rebel group to come help destroy the big bad people. And not only is the base premise where the fact that the rebels are actually the monarchists who want to reestablish a monarchy, and the bad guys are the liberationists who overthrew the monarchy, and we kind of get this feeling of being in the middle. It's done really, really well, and that was something I enjoyed, where we're exploring what it's like to be in the middle. It's a lot of times we focus on like good versus evil, or like, the underdog taking on the big bad, but this here is more like our main character is kind of forced into the middle of it, but she doesn't really fit with either group per se. It's kind of in that middle, and there's definitely a lot of commentary in here about what happens to just the regular people when there's war between two powers. What happens to the just civilians, the people who just kind of get caught up in the crossfire and aren't really on either side. And so that was a really interesting exploration that this did, once again, in a pretty short amount of time. This is, it's like 170-ish pages, I believe, so not even 200 pages. Not super long, but Kate Elliott is just, especially I found from Cronstars, fantastic at world building. And that's kind of where we get into is the characters fell a little bit flat. Partially, I think, because of our protagonist, Felian, and the way that she interacts with people. It makes sense that we're not getting to know them as much as we might in a longer story, but we do get some little bits and pieces to see who they are, what their personality is, and based on how they react to certain things in other situations, we see them and we get to know them a little bit, but we don't get a ton. We're mostly focusing on Felian, and due to the nature of the story, we're kind of slowly learning more about her and her past as we go on. It's not done with flashbacks or anything, it's just kind of seeing how she reacts and kind of slow bits of reveal as we learn more about her. So the character of Felian I thought was well done. The rest of the characters we just don't have time to focus on, which is unfortunate. And that, like I said, with it being a novella and with it being short, that's kind of where this still falls into, I wish it would have been a full-length novel. I definitely think that Elliott would have done things differently and spent more time building out the world, building out the magic system, and making the characters a lot more memorable if this was something that was full-length. Those are things that she excels at, in my experience, is the world building and creating very in-depth characters. And so I was just really missing that here. I really wanted more, and I knew I wasn't going to get it because it's a novella. I don't know if there's going to be follow-ups following some of the same characters or in the world. I haven't looked into it a ton at this point. I'm definitely going to be. But it's just kind of one of those things where it felt like a novella or a short story. It had those things where we suddenly changed direction of the plot. The first time that happened, it did feel a little bit clumsy, and I think, once again, it's just, you kind of have to expect that in a shorter setting because we need to go direct and get us where we're going. We don't have time to really extrapolate and have things happen slowly over due course. So we kind of just do a 90-degree turn to change the plot at one point, and the ending, like I kind of mentioned, definitely to me felt a lot like the kind of ending you get in a novella short story, where we do get some answers and some resolution, but a lot of it's just left very open-ended, because once again we don't have time to really explore a lot more of what's going on because it's a short novel, a novella, story, whatever you want to call it. This one is like, I mean, you get books that are full length and that are only a little bit longer than this, but like I said, it just really felt shorter. So I know it's a novella, but at points it had some of the feeling of a short story. So that was really my main complaint with it, but there was still a lot of interesting things going on, learning about, and there's so many still little touches that Elliott does with the world as well. So we get to learn more about the magic system, where the magic comes from. There is like an ethereal plane where wraiths and demons are, that's very much real. We learn too about some of the history of it, and like even little tidbits, like there's literally something with the magic that involves cattle, and I'm not going to go into detail there, but just things that I feel like you wouldn't get in most novellas or short stories, because Kate Elliott is really doing her best to build out the world as much as possible in a short amount of time. Normally, at least, once again, I do have to say, I'm basing a lot of my opinions on her writing from Crown of Stars, because that's the series I've read. Oh, no, up here. I read the first 4 on. I haven't read her other stuff, so I don't know if things changed with her style, but she liked to, at least in Crown of Stars, slowly build up the world and then have things progress and then expand out more and just kind of keep going. So really having a long series for her, I thought she was able to just really do everything she wanted. With this, I couldn't help but be wanting more. It's just kind of where I landed on it, as wanting more. I ended up giving this about a 3.5 stars because I liked it, but with me just kind of wanting more and wanting more fleshing out, I couldn't bump it up any higher than that. So that's between liked and really liked. It was a good story and one that I definitely think is worth reading. Unfortunately, the other problem is that I was looking and they're selling this novella for $19.99. It is a hardcover, but this is a 174, I'm pretty sure that's right, I think 174 page novella. That seems a little steep for me, and so I don't know. I don't think that the author has anything to do with that. I'm sure that's publishers and everything, but it just reminds me of how like some of Neil Gaiman's work is like ridiculously expensive to buy, even if it's short. That always annoys me, so I don't know that I'll be buying a physical copy of this one, just because I liked it, but I wasn't in love with it by any means. I'll definitely be checking out more stuff as it comes out. This might be, if it does turn into a series or a full, like maybe something that I'll just buy the ebook of, which is how I read this, being an eARC, but that's just one of those things I do feel like I have to mention. And I'll still put, if this is something that interests you, I'll put a link to both the physical and the ebook for an Amazon affiliate link. If you do want to purchase this, I'll get some sort of small commission for that. But full disclosure, like I said, the hardcover, because I looked it up, is just, seems a bit high for the short length of this to me. So I don't know. Maybe it's something special. I haven't really looked into if it's like really good, but just paying that much for a novella seems steep to me. So that was kind of my last thought. Not about the actual book, but about the publishing and the sale. So something I did want to know. But really, those are my thoughts on Servant Mage by Kate Elliott. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to give it a like. Check the link in the description for the Wizardly Duo Discord if you want to chat with us about books, anything. It's a really great community. We have a lot going on all the time. We've got new events going on. I guess the book type games, all kinds of stuff. So it's really, there's just a ton of interaction, and it's really the best way to interact with my channel and the Andrew's channel. If you do want to talk to us there, we have a great community, so definitely check that out. And of course, if you'd like to see more of my content, make sure to subscribe.